China, the Chinese chicken. You have a drumstick and your brain stops sticking.
Hey everyone, this is China Chicken, and I wanted to go over Hard Knocks Training Camp with the Buffalo Bills, Episode 4. I believe this is the second to last episode, so they'll be getting into the preseason Game 3 with the Buffalo Bills against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So they might be talking about some potential cuts that they're going to have to make, because obviously the roster goes from 90 players down to 53 very soon. So we'll see if they talk about that at all, or if they get into any of that in this episode. I kind of feel like they'll save it for the final episode, especially since there's not another preseason game to go over in the next episode. So we'll see where that goes. So this was my favorite scene in the whole show so far. All 4 episodes that we've seen so far, this was my favorite scene. And it was Josh Allen and all the other quarterbacks going through throwing motions with all these cameras around him. You can see there's at least 4 cameras around him right here with his throwing motion. And they're doing, the NFL science on Josh Allen's throwing motion, and just how far he's come over the past 8 years since he was a rookie. So he's been doing this for a long time, every year, maybe even weekly or monthly, I'm not too sure, but he'll do all these different types of throws, and they track it over his whole career so far. So they've shown Josh Allen just how far he's come with his throwing motion. When he came into the NFL, he was very raw. His footwork was horrible. His body motion was also horrible. The only thing that he had was his arm. His arm was compensating for his bad footwork and his bad torque that he had with his body. And throughout the years, off-season after off-season, this technology has really helped him develop his new throwing motion. He used to have such a long windup. Now he has like a very short windup, and his footwork is very good. And you can see he's just so much more fluid. Everything comes from his feet with the drop back, planting in the right spots, and being able to torque your body. So he's not using as much of his arm strength, and it's all coming from his legs and through the torque from his waist and his hips and everything. So I thought this was like the coolest scene, is to watch his progression throughout his career with his throwing motion. So I thought that was really cool. And it's crazy, you can even see it in the classroom. Here they are, all the quarterbacks and quarterback coaches in the classroom here, going over Josh Allen and all the other quarterbacks throwing motions with all those 3D cameras and everything. And the guy here, I forget his name, but he's the one that's expert in all this. And he puts up like graphs of all their throws. So each throwing motion to whatever route their receivers are running, he can kind of graph it and show you over time how far you've come and your arm strength and your power that you're putting on it. He talked a lot about Mitch Trubisky and how far he's come over the years with this technology, and what he needs to do to get better as well, and what he's doing really well. So I thought that was really cool as well, that they sit down in the classroom and they go over the graphs of all these throws that they have here. And this the guy here that's teaching all the quarterbacks about this, he's all so glowing about Josh Allen. I'm sure Josh Allen is his number one student, and he's probably come the farthest and throughout the years with this. So I thought that was really cool to see. And you can tell Josh Allen is really into it. And he even says that this guy changed his life with his throwing motion and everything. And he really got him to where he needed to be, where he is now as an MVP quarterback. So coming from, not being anything out of high school or even in college to where he is now as an MVP quarterback. So good for Josh Allen. and good for this guy teaching this class and doing the 3D camera mapping and everything. So I thought that was awesome. And here we have a scene with KJ Hamler, who gets really emotional talking about a time that randomly a couple years ago he woke up in the middle of the night. It was like 3 or 4 a.m. or something, and he felt something weird with his heart, and he thought he was having a heart attack or a stroke or something, and he drove himself to the hospital, and they weren't really able to do anything about it for a while because someone else in the hospital went into cardiac arrest, so they couldn't really do anything about him at that time. So he had to wait like a couple hours until he can get medication and figure out what was going on, and he ended up having some like inflamed tissue around his heart or something, so he ended up being okay. But it must have been a really scary moment for him, and I feel bad for him. He kind of thought like this was his last day, that he was going to die that day, so kind of rough for him. But I'm glad he was able to come out of it and come back stronger. And he's gone through a lot of injuries in his career. He was saying how he's had 2 ACLs, he's had a shoulder issue, I think, so good for him being able to power through and keep playing. And he's making a name for himself for the Bills, and maybe he'll make the 53-man roster. We'll see. And here we have Jimmy Charlo, who's hoping to make the 53-man roster as a special teamer, and he's really focusing on special teams and being the gunner and, running down the field as fast as he can to make the tackle on the punter or the kick returner or whatever it is. And he's saying how he lives right now. He's in a hotel, living out of a hotel like 20 minutes away from the facility, and just hoping to get a chance, hoping to make that 53-man roster. And he's staying late at night. He really doesn't have anything else to do. As he's supposed to do, go back to his hotel. So he stays there, 12, 14, 16 hours a day, probably trying to get better at his craft. And here he is just having a, FaceTime call with his dad. So it's a really nice story. His dad is his biggest fan, and they're best friends. And yeah, so I really like this story with Jimmy Charlo here out of Navy College, and he was an Army veteran, military veteran. So good for Jimmy Charlo trying to make this team after, I think this is his second year technically, but last year in preseason he got season-ending injury. So he's trying to make a name for himself on this team, and I'm sure just being on HBO's Hard Knocks is going to help him out in the future for sure. Definitely one of my favorite parts of Hard Knocks so far is all these random clips that we get of practice with the music in the background. It really gets me pumped up. It gets me having goosebumps on my arms, and the hair standing up on my arms. It just gets me so excited for football. And they're just showing these slow motion clips of Josh Allen throwing the wide receivers and having that iconic HBO music in the background, the Hard Knocks music. So I just really love these slow motion scenes. I think they're very underrated. Not a lot of people talk about them, but yeah, I just really love these slow motion scenes. They got to be really fun to film and to edit behind the scenes to put into the show. So yeah, just something low on the radar that I wanted to highlight about HBO's Hard Knocks. They do a really good job with this stuff, all the close-up shots, the slow-mo, throwing motion and stuff like that. So it's really cool. So this was a really interesting scene where they are in Brandon Beane, the GM's office, with a bunch of, directors of personnel or whatever, and they're talking about all their players and getting ready for the next preseason game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and who should they put out there, who they shouldn't put out there. So I think a lot of this is a big clue on who's going to make the 53-man roster, because, they're probably not going to put those guys out there on the last preseason game. They're going to give a lot of their players on the bubble one last chance to kind of make a name for themselves, to make this team, or even, put on some tape so they can make another team, potentially. So I thought this was kind of interesting, them just kind of going through some of the players, and they're, saying Shane Buechele, he's going to take most of the snaps, if not all of the snaps, which he ends up doing. He ends up taking the entire workload of the quarterback. So you kind of just know from that he's not going to make this team. So they're just kind of throwing him out there, having some good tape out there. And he really does. He has a great game. He throws for like 275 yards and a couple of touchdowns. So he really got some good tape out there, and maybe another team will see this and really like it. So I thought this was really cool, them just like discussing who they're going to be putting out there for the next preseason game. I really love this too. They have a discussion here. They're already in Tampa Bay for the preseason game. This is Sean McDermott and Tracy McGrady and Vince Carter as well. And they're the two new minority owners for the Buffalo Bills. They also have Josie Altidore as a minority owner. So I really love this discussion that they're having. And Sean's asking them like, hey, how do you build the championship team? And Tracy McGrady and Vince Carter are giving Sean McDermott their perspective from basketball on how to make a championship team. I think they both won championships, so it was really interesting to hear from them and what makes a good leader and what makes a championship team. And they were saying, just being prepared, coming to practice, coming to the game, coming to the meetings, all prepared, really shows yourself as a good leader. And that's championship caliber there, is being prepared. So I thought that was really cool to hear from those guys. And it seemed like Sean McDermott agreed, even though Sean McDermott doesn't have a Super Bowl yet, but I believe he will soon. And this right here was a little discussion Sean McDermott was having with the entire team in like a classroom setting. And this was, I think, the night before the last preseason game. So, he's talking mostly to the young guys, but he's saying, this is your last chance to put everything you have out on the plate. Put everything you have out on the table here. This is your last chance. Go out there and make a name for yourself and have fun. And you can tell he gets even a little emotional here. He really loves all these guys, and he doesn't want to lose anyone. He doesn't want to go from 90 guys to 53 guys, but he has to. So he does get a little emotional here, and I really like to see that out of him because, he's come a long way with all these guys. And even though Sean McDermott's been doing this for a long time, he still gets emotional, and he still thinks about these players and their families, especially the young guys that are trying to make a name for themselves and won't end up making the team. And, maybe they won't be in the NFL next year or later in the year, and they're going to have to get a different job or something. So he really feels for those guys, and I really like seeing this out of McDermott. It really goes to show that he's a great coach. He really cares for his players, and he wants the best for them. So I love this out of Sean McDermott. He's a great coach, and he's my favorite coach, obviously, as a Bills fan, but really like hearing this out of him. And this right here was the play of the preseason to me. This is Tyrell Shavers catching a touchdown over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers cornerback. And at first you're like, oh man, he's just out of bounds. The referee calls him out. And you're like, no, man, that would have been such a cool catch for him. Such a good play for Shavers trying to make this team for a third year in a row. The last 2 years he was on the practice squad. So he's really trying to make this team for one final attempt. And he finally makes this awesome catch, and they roll him out of bounds. But after the replay, they say his knee was down before he went out of bounds, so he gets the touchdown, and this is the play for him. And everyone is saying online, this is it. He's got that touchdown, and he's on the team for sure. And I definitely agree. I definitely believe he deserves to be on this team, on the 53-man roster, not just the practice squad. And he does it. He makes the team, and I'm so proud of him. Tyrell Shavers, he's the man, and I hope he gets some playing time this season because I think he can make a name for himself and be electric out there. So I'm glad for Tyrell Shavers. I'm glad he was able to make this team. It's such a nice story for him, so good job on you, buddy. And at the end of the episode here, you get to see Sean McDermott here shouting out some players in the locker room right after the game. He shouts out Tyrell Shavers getting that touchdown. He also shouts out Shane Buechele, the quarterback, who plays really good. He plays the entire game, so I really hope he can be on the Bills practice squad. That would be pretty awesome, or maybe even make another team. But as a Bills fan, I would like to keep him around on the practice squad. So that was really cool that he shouted those two guys out. And also, he shouted out Jimmy Charlo, who got a fumble recovery in the game, and they kind of showed him playing like every position. He was out there as, he was always used to as a linebacker, but he was out there as a nickel cornerback as well, just putting a body out there and seeing what he can do. And Brandon Beane was talking about him and saying, hey, Jimmy Charlo's a football player. And that's what we want on this team, is we want guys that can play a little bit of everything. They can be versatile and they can play a little bit of everything. Special teams, linebacker, nickel corner, you know it. So Jimmy Charlo really put a name for himself, and I believe he's going to be on the Bills practice squad as well. Unfortunately, he doesn't make the 53-man roster, but he'll be on the practice squad. So good for him. And I did really like this episode of Hard Knocks. This was a great one. I don't know if it was the best episode, but I really liked it with Josh Allen's throwing motion mapping and all that. So yeah, let me know what you guys think down below about this episode. Let me know who you think should make the team, who you think shouldn't make the team. And leave a like and subscribe, and have a great day, everybody.
Chickadee China, the Chinese chicken. You have a drumstick and your brain stops sticking.